where the people don't speak horror story like and sub for the best Reddit stories on YouTube. Enjoy. I had to go on a business trip, and as the miles stretched on, fatigue and hunger began to creep in. I decided to pull into a small, almost deserted town that I had stumbled upon. The place had an eerie stillness to it, but I was too tired to care. I drove up to a cafe, only to find it closed. Determined to find something to eat, I wandered around, noticing that all the shops were shut down. The only place that seemed open was a small market. It was weird. I thought it was Monday, and yet nothing was open. I decided to go inside, thinking I could at least grab some fresh fruit. As I entered, I immediately noticed the unsettling silence. Nobody greeted me, and the air felt thick with unease. I gathered a few items and approached the cashier, trying to make small talk. However, when I spoke, the cashier recoiled in fear, his eyes widening as if he had seen a ghost. He hurriedly took my money, his hands trembling, and gave me my change with a hurried, almost desperate motion. Without uttering a single word, he then walked out of the store, leaving me standing there in bewilderment. This strange encounter left me feeling deeply uneasy, but exhaustion weighed heavily on me, and I was too tired to dwell on it. I just took my bag and walked out into the dimly lit street. I drove a little further into the town, and then realized that the streets were eerily empty. There were no other cars in sight, and the few people who were out were shuffling along with their heads down, as if weighed down by an invisible burden. My windows were down, and instead of the usual bustling town noises, I only heard the haunting sound of the wind whispering through the empty streets. It was as if the town itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Eventually, I found an inn to stay at for the night. The woman at the front desk reacted similarly to the cashier when I spoke to her. Her eyes darted around nervously, and she quickly handed me the keys to my room, making sure to avoid eye contact. Her hands were shaking slightly, and she fumbled with her necklace before hurriedly retreating to a back room. The unsettling atmosphere of the town seemed to permeate every corner. I grabbed my keys, feeling a little annoyed by the behavior of the people in this town. I settled down into my room for the night, hoping to get some much-needed sleep before my meeting tomorrow. That night, I experienced for the first time ever a terrifying case of sleep paralysis. A tall, slender figure stood ominously in the corner of my room. It inched its way closer, each movement slow and deliberate, until it was right beside my bed. Its shadow seemed to stretch across the room, engulfing everything in a suffocating darkness. The figure bent down to my ear and whispered "shoo" before disappearing. The feeling of this thing's breath was icy. It burned as the cold air touched my skin and trickled down my neck. The sensation lingered there for a while, leaving a chilling imprint that felt like frostbite. My body was paralyzed, and I could only watch in horror as the figure vanished into the shadows, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. Finally, I was able to move and get up. I was shaken by the experience, my heart pounding in my chest. The room felt colder, and I could still feel the lingering touch of that icy breath. I checked every corner of the room, but there was no sign of the figure. Sleep was impossible after that. I went to confront the woman at the front desk about what had happened, and to demand a change of room. My fear caused my voice to rise, but she immediately retreated, her eyes wide with alarm, and grabbed a pen and paper from the counter. With trembling hands, she wrote, "Don't talk." Confused and frustrated, I read the note and looked at her, my patience wearing thin. What on earth is going on here? I demanded rather than asked, my voice echoing in the empty lobby. I have to be up early, and I can't even get some sleep in here. I just want my room changed, I said angrily, my words slicing through the tense silence. She continued frantically writing, her eyes darting around as if expecting something dreadful to happen at any moment. Please, stop talking. The town was cursed many years ago by a woman who was claimed to be a witch. Before they burned her, she put a curse on the town. Whoever shall speak shall be punished. You have done a lot of talking. The urgency in her scribbled words was palpable, and the fear in her eyes mirrored my own growing anger. Rage and skepticism washed over me. I told her she was full of it and that I would be leaving first thing in the morning and filing a complaint. She simply wrote down, "Good." Fuming, I went back to my room, determined to get some rest before leaving this cursed place. As I lay down, I felt something press against my mattress, as if someone had laid down beside me. Turning to look, I saw a woman sitting at the foot of my bed. Her eyes were pitch black, devoid of any emotion, and her long, greasy white hair hung in tangled strands, giving her an eerie and unsettling appearance. Her skin was pale and almost translucent, making her look ghostly in the dim light of the room. She smiled wide at me, revealing razor-sharp teeth that gleamed menacingly. "Shoo," she whispered, her voice a chilling hiss, as she leaned over me. My body was frozen with fear, unable to move or scream. Her breath was cold against my skin, and I could feel the malevolence radiating from her. I let out a scream of terror as the witch slowly twisted her long, sharp fingernail into my chest, the pain searing through me as her malevolent grin grew wider. The air around me seemed to thicken, and a sense of impending doom enveloped me as I realized I was trapped in this nightmare. I could feel her penetrating my skin as I groaned out in agony. With a desperate burst of energy, I leaped out of bed and struggled to run to the door. I felt her cold, bony hands grab at me, her nails scraping my skin, but I barely made it, bolting out of the hotel room. As I ran past the front desk, I noticed the lady there looking horrified, hiding under the desk. Her eyes were wide with fear. I dashed to my car and sped away from the town. The image of the witch's malevolent grin burned into my memory. When I finally arrived at my meeting, I was late, disheveled, and improperly dressed. My clothes were wrinkled, and I had a wild, frantic look in my eyes. The meeting was canceled, and they told me to reschedule in the upcoming months. The disappointment was palpable, but the terror I had just escaped overshadowed everything else. Returning home, I broke the bad news to my wife, but didn't mention the strange town or the eerie encounter. I vowed never to go back. The memory of the witch's cold, bony hands and her malevolent grin haunted my thoughts, but I couldn't bring myself to tell anyone. Years later, I finally mustered the courage to talk to my wife about it. As I explained, my wife asked the name of the town. I think it was something like Edgewood, I said. She looked it up, only to find that such a place never existed. This discovery sent chills down my spine, making me question my own sanity. I have the scar, I said, showing my wife the scar on my chest from where the witch had dug her nail into me. The scar was a constant reminder of that night, a physical proof that something terrible had happened. This revelation altered my reality and left me deeply troubled. I didn't understand it. I had physical proof, and I remembered it all too well. The scar throbbed sometimes, as if the witch's curse still lingered. My wife believes me, but she says maybe I got the name wrong, but I'm sure I didn't. I went to therapy, thinking it would help clear some of this up, but the experience still haunts me. Every night, I dream of that town, the witch, and her sinister smile. It seems like a strange nightmare, yet I know it was real. The line between reality and illusion blurred, leaving me in a perpetual state of unease, forever haunted by that witch of Edgewood.